All right, what's shaking, besties? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephen Warner. I am a Reiki Master Teacher of the Usui Holy Fire 3 system of Reiki, and I am a Reiki practitioner of the 5-element Dragon Fire Reiki system of Reiki. What does that mean? There's different styles of Reiki, there's different schools of Reiki, and in the 5-element Dragonfire school of Reiki, I'm not yet a master. I've got 2 more levels left to get there, so I don't teach it yet, but I'm getting there. I am a master teacher of the Usui Holy Fire system of Reiki, which is the original system of Reiki that I learned in one of the most common systems of Reiki in the West. 5-element Dragonfire Reiki is a next iteration. It's the most recent iteration of Reiki that was introduced by my Reiki master teacher. Really cool stuff. If you want more information about Reiki, click on this video here. I hired a virtual assistant, and right now we're working on adding links to my videos. So if you want to know more about Reiki, eventually there'll be a link here to tell you more on it. All right, what the fuck is up? So in this video, I am going to be talking about how I used my piss play kink to vacate shame out of my body and heal from religious conditioning. Now, that's a lot. That's a hefty statement. Where the fuck do we begin? I have the answers for you. So I actually have notes, believe it or not, because I am going to be using a book to help lay out the principles of the mechanics of the energy work that happened here. I'm an energy worker through and through. I teach people energy work, and for me, learning energy work and learning Reiki was the foundational tool in my self-help toolkit that really started to make the difference in my life to change and heal and get off of Western pharmaceuticals and break the cycle of addiction and break the cycle of codependent relationships and leave the trauma bond that was my marriage and really start creating a life for myself that I'm absolutely in love with. The Reiki was the beginning of that. So I teach that and I help other people understand those concepts so that they can do it for themselves. And everything that I talk about is through the lens of energy work. It's a language that I learned that made sense to me in a way that all the other shit never did. So I like using books and the way that other people say things and pulling resources and concepts that other people use to demonstrate how this makes sense to me. Okay? So there is a book called Existential Kink by Carolyn Elliott. And this is a book that teaches you how to dive into shadow work. What is shadow work? Shadow work is when we dive into the parts of our psyche that are in the shadow or otherwise repressed or not in the light. So shadow work is doing the work. It's shining the light on the parts of our psyche that we would prefer not to look at, that our ego would prefer to look the other way. And there are all different types of shadow work, but this book, Existential Kink, is a specific type of shadow work. And the principles, like I said, in this book really lay the foundation for how leaning into my piss play kink vacated shame out of my body and helped me heal from the shame that I internalized from my religious conditioning. So, key principles of this book. This book talks about we have shadow desires. So this book talks about we are multidimensional beings and we come into the human body, right? We come in to have a human experience, and our higher selves, or the non-physical part of ourselves, our the spiritual component of us, come in and say, hey, let's do the earth thing, let's go have a human body, and let's go have a visceral fucking experience. They choose to have the human experience. And the human experience is a full spectrum of feelings. It's pain, it's pleasure, it's joy, it's sadness, it's anger, it's rage, it's bliss, it's ecstasy, it's frustration, it's jealousy, it's anxiety, it's all of the things, right? All of those feelings, all of those emotions are high sensation, visceral experiences that are consciousness gets to experience in the human body. Okay? Maybe I don't need these notes. Who fucking knows? So the book talks about this axiom, right? Axioms are like not necessarily truths, but like you apply them as truths for the purposes of deepening into concepts and principles. So they're like made up truths. But one of the axioms is the only difference between pain and pleasure is conscious description of it. So like we decide that pain is bad and pleasure is good. And the axiom says that they're actually just both high sensation. It's the conscious mind that says, oh, I don't like that one and I do like this one. This one is bad and I should avoid this one, and this one is good and I always want this one. The book, again, we're multidimensional beings coming into a human experience to have the full breadth of the visceral experience that is the human experience. Stay with me. Stay fucking with me. I've got so much shit to say. I've got so many things to talk about, and I'm really leaving perfectionism aside and like not waiting until I'm perfectly energized and have all the notes to say all the things perfectly. I really just want to get my shit out there so you guys can like start digesting it sooner versus later. So bear with me. Existential kink. What is an existential kink? This book says that we all have our existential kinks, and our existential kinks are the part of our consciousness that is getting off or secretly like really enjoying the things that our conscious mind says we don't like. So an example of this would be like poverty, right? So I've done a lot of work around money. I used to be quite broke, and I'm like on top of my money game for the first time ever, and I'm doing so well, and that's so exciting. But I can think back to my relationship with my ex-husband where we were just fucking broke and like trying to like scrape by and make money and make ends meet, and consciously it's like, no, fuck that, I want more money. Like, I don't like being broke. I wish I had more money so I'd have the freedom and the ease and the joy and the pleasure of doing whatever the hell I want when I want it, right? Unconsciously, the existential kink there is that scarcity, that scraping by to make ends meet, that worry of, are we going to have enough patients in the clinic to generate enough revenue to pay rent? Like, that worry and that scarcity, it like ties you up. And although our conscious mind says, I don't like that, unconsciously we're having a high intensity visceral experience. And that's the kink. That's the unconscious part of ourselves, like actually like relishing in it and saying, oh, fuck yes. The same way, like applying it as to like the principle of bondage, right? Like where if you're bonded up by something, you're tied up, like every move you make is restrained. And every action that you take is limited, and it's all controlled by an external source. Like you're not in control, and people get off on it. That's a kink that people have. So this book talks about all different kinds of existential kinks that we have. Another thing that I love about this book is it invites everyone to take radical responsibility for every part of our lives. This book isn't like, you got to get past the whole victimhood mentality to really like let this book sink in, because this book talks about radical self-ownership. It says that the axiom is every part of our life, there's a part of us that's enjoying it. We wouldn't have it if there wasn't a part of us that didn't want it. Okay? You with me? You following? So the actual shadow work in this book talks about going into meditative states and leaning into the high sensation visceral experiences that we have from all of the things that are bad, all the things that we don't want, and like removing the conscious connotation of it's bad and seeing if you can sink into just the high sensation of it. And then you take it to the next step and like, can you find the pleasure in it? Can you find the pleasure in that bondage of being like always worried and can only make so much moves and always like scraping by. Like, can you just strip away the conscious connotation of it and just relish in the high sensation of it all? And what the book says is that when we get the conscious and the unconscious mind to meet there, they don't fight anymore. They're not fighting, because the unconscious mind is like getting off on this kink, like yes, 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 let's keep the scarcity coming, I'm loving it. And the conscious mind's like, no, 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 let me try so fucking hard to make more money and do all the things. There's like this like battle that's going on inside you. And it's once you can get the conscious and the unconscious mind to like stop arguing and just like rejoice and like relish in a neutral or potentially positive experience of those existential kinks, is when it can stop playing out unconsciously. It's like it can finally be fully expressed. It can finally be fully embraced, and therefore doesn't need to keep playing out in all of these unconscious shadow aspects of ourselves. Okay. So it's a really fucking good book. And Carolyn Elliott, she's like a super smarty pants. Like, she's got PhDs, she's got all this stuff. She does amazing fucking work. This is actually just like the surface I've scratched in her world, but it's by far like my favorite book of all time. It talks about Greek mythology. It's so good. It's so good. Read the fucking book, enjoy it, start applying the principles. Now, how does this apply to fucking piss play? How does this apply to religious trauma? Let me tell you, buckle up. So I was raised Catholic. I was raised in the Catholic faith, and I was raised like deep in it. My mother was my CCD teacher, my religious education teacher. I went to church every Sunday. I went to religious education every Wednesday. I was an altar boy, and it was like a cool thing. It was like, it wasn't like until I got into my teenage years, but like when I was younger, I was like, I want to be an altar boy, and it's like a cool thing to participate in the church. And like I adopted this whole philosophy of identity in the Catholic faith. I went to church camp. I had fun at church camp. I went to church camp, and like in the cafeteria, we would like have table shouting matches of, I love Jesus, yes I do, I love Jesus, how about you? And then the other table would say it louder. I went to church camp, and we would have like music time, and they would play like, how great is our God, sing with me. And it was like fucking 10, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, like they were making like these emotional experiences, and we would go pray on each other, and we would like, and we learned that we're all sinners. We learned that we have to repent. We learned that we're inherently bad. We learned that we are inherently bad, and that we live a life of sin, and the only way to be good is to do your best to follow these 10 commandments. And if you don't follow them, you have to go pray for forgiveness. And like, that's just that without any gayness added in. You add being gay in it, and your entire sexuality then gets conditioned with, you're wrong, you should die. Like the Bible talks about like killing gay people. Like it's like a mortal sin to be gay. And not to mention how much the church just represses sexuality in general. The Catholic Church just represses sexuality in general, but add gayness on top of it, and it's just, it bred into me so much shame around my body and around my pleasure. So much shame in my body that I can remember being so nervous to going to middle school, because middle school there was gym class. In gym class you had to change in the locker room. And having my shirt off, I like this light, having my shirt off in front of other guys, or being in my boxer shorts in front of other guys, was very uncomfortable. I was so uncomfortable with my body from a young age that I didn't even want to be like seen undressed by anybody else. I can remember in 7th grade gym class, we were like outside for field day, and it was like a 10-minute walk from like the gymnasium to the outside fields where we were going, and the teams were getting switched, and I had to switch jerseys, which required me to take off my shirt and put a different one on. And the gym teacher asked if I'm comfortable just going behind the shed. And I was like, no, I want to go all the way inside. Like, I can't be seen with my shirt off, because I was that uncomfortable with my body. Where am I going with this? Lots of shame in my body. Lots of shame around my body. Oh, masturbation is a sin? Touching yourself is a sin? Like, I would go to the confessional in the Catholic faith, where you go in that little box and you talk to the priest and you're like, priest, I'm so sorry. It's so fucking kinky if you ask, and you're like, Daddy, please forgive me, I've been bad. Like, the Catholic Church is fucking kinky. They just pretend they're not. But anyways, it was just like this whole like doctrination of repression and shame bred into my sexuality and my body. I think I made the point clear. In my mind, I was gonna like paint a more clear picture here, but that's all that's coming through right now, so whatever. So I got married, and I got married to a man, and in this relationship, I was very like starved sexually. I'll make another video about all that relationship and everything, but like, I'm such a free sexual person, and I've known this for a very long time, but there was so much like conditioning around my sexual self that it was so easy for me to like stay in a cage and go into a marriage where my sexuality continued to be in a cage because of, you know, what was allowed and wasn't, and what was and wasn't allowed. And so there was just all of this like yearning and desperation within me to like express and explore myself outside of the small confines of what was a very toxic and codependent and emotionally abusive relationship. But eventually, towards the end of it, as I was like clawing and kicking and screaming to like, I just need another place to express myself sexually, I wanted to make an OnlyFans. I really wanted to make an OnlyFans account. And I talked about it. And finally he's like, I'm not quoting him directly, but it was like, fine, just fucking make one. Just fucking make one, fine, go for it. I was like, yes. But I was also nervous. I was also super nervous. But I did know that in order to make a OnlyFans and to like monetize off of that, you have to build up an audience, you have to build up a following. And I knew that people did that on websites like Twitter and Reddit. So I went on Reddit and I started exploring the gay Reddit community and posting photos in there and videos, and it was so fucking liberating. It was like back in the day when you would go on Omegle and like talk to guys on Omegle, and like you would kind of be like stripping in front of them. It was like so like, oh my God. And I'm fucking like 23 years old. Like I'm 22, and it's like this like, oh my God, I'm posting naked photos online and I'm talking to other boys about it. It was so invigorating because I was so caged before that. And I eventually made a Snapchat account, and in that Snapchat account, I would post, you know, videos and stuff for people to see on my story. And within all of this, I had read Existential Kink, and at the time I was actually doing a lot of work. I continue to do a lot of work with my Reiki master teacher in one-on-one containers for like some deep transformative like inner landscape work. And she was the one that introduced Existential Kink to me in the book. And as I mentioned, we were very poor. Like we didn't have a lot of money. And so I was doing a lot of heavy lifting in my own internal landscape to try and like shift things towards building the internal, like the environment required for more money to come into the relationship. And so I leaned into the poverty kink, but instead of like the bondage, like scraping by, like I kind of leaned into that a little bit, but I also leaned into like, you think of being broke and poor, and you think of like potentially being on the streets, like that's a very dirty experience. It's a very like dirty, not clean, unhygienic experience because you're not showering, right? And so I started doing these meditations with the Existential Kink and leaning into what would feel really dirty but also feel really hot. And I'm also a big bath guy, so I love taking fucking baths. I fucking love myself a good bath. And I would take baths all the time at our house in Wisconsin. And this meditation that I would do, I would visualize like a bunch of like really gorgeous guys, like buff muscle guys, big beautiful cocks, standing over and like pissing on me in the bathtub. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And just like being dominated and like kind of like violated by them, but not really violated, but like dominated in a take this kind of way, like you're so like be dirty because of me kind of way. And that was one of the meditations that I leaned into. And at the time, I was also like, I really like this piss play kink that I am about to tell you about how far I dove into it was a new thing for me, because at the time I would take baths and I really enjoyed just letting my bladder go at the end of the bath and just like peeing, like yay. No hands, you know what I'm saying? But I would always do it at the end of the bath. I would always do it at the end of the bath because then I could like drain it and take a shower and like rinse off, like, oh God, ew, you know what I'm saying? And so now I'm combining what I did there with like this visualization of other hot guys peeing on me and leaning into the dirtiness and leaning into the messiness and leaning into like the grossness of it. And I started getting more into it. And then I have this Snapchat account where I'm posting about it online. And I remember one time posting a Snapchat video on my story of me pissing in the bath on myself, kind of turned on by it. Not sure what the reaction was gonna be, but a bunch of guys responded, was like, dude, that's so fucking hot. We wanna see more of that. I was like, okay. And this was where the timeline starts to get a little bit blurry, but within the next 3, 4, 5 months, I end up leaving my husband and I end up moving out on my own. And I get my own place, and now I've got like completely free reign to explore my sexuality any fucking way I see fit. I bought dildos for the first time. I had them before, but like I really like had the space to go and explore myself in a way that I never had before. And I finally had the space to really lean into this OnlyFans project that I wanted to get going on, because while he said, okay, go for it, there was still all these underlying levels of resentment where it was never actually a safe space for me to do that. It was just like, okay, fine, but I'm actually gonna hold resentment for you and like it's gonna bubble up and boil out someplace. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk shit, but I did have that experience and it is my experience to share. And I do hold a lot of love for my ex-husband, and I was not a perfect person during any of that It Takes Two to Tango. And I did a lot of shit that I'm not proud of, and I apologize for that. And we've kind of come to terms with it all, and we don't really talk anymore, but we have love for each other and I care about him, but we're just not in a place, I'm not in a place where I want to have any sort of relationship with him. But at the same time, like, he is a character in the timeline of my life and is part of the story, and so like I'm not gonna I'm gonna talk about it. Anyways, so now that I'm living on my own, I am able to explore myself so freely, and I make a Twitter account, and I eventually get really into this piss play kink, and I make it just for fans, and I make an OnlyFans, and I make a Fansly account, and it turns out OnlyFans is very vanilla with the content that they allow. So the level of piss play that I was getting into, OnlyFans is like, no. And I was like, okay. So I'll go to a different website. I'll go to Just for Fans, and this is where I really started letting loose. And there was something about the validation that I got from it. There was something about other people being into me engaging in this wet and messy piss play that gave me permission to enjoy it. And now we're gonna talk more about like, what is it about this kink that turns me on? And what I like about it is like the dirtiness of it, like the messiness of it, this like to piss all over yourself and to like soak your clothes in your own piss and to feel like your insides on your outsides and have it be wet and slippery and to be sitting on the floor jerking off with your balls like splashing in a puddle of your own piss. Like that's fucking filthy. That's some filthy fucking shit. And guess what I learned I was in the Catholic Church? Dirty, filthy, sinful, wrong. And now I'm leaning into the pleasure of something that would otherwise be considered dirty, filthy, sinful, or like wrong. Think about pissing your pants as a kid. Like that would be the most shameful thing you could do. That would be the most embarrassing thing you could ever do. But here I am finding pleasure in it. Here I am completely embracing it, completely rejoicing in it, completely like orgasming in it, and making money while I'm doing it too. So all of that exploration that I dove into around this kink, it was so fucking healing. It vacated so much of that internalized, repressed shame and disgust around my body out. This experience really was what turned me on to the potency of our sexual energies and the potencies of our sexual energies when we use them for a vehicle for healing. Yes. For the purposes of this video though, like where did that bring me? What did that do for me? I'm not saying it took all the shame out of my body. You guys just watched my fucking sex party one with my skin tag on my asshole and being happy baby style. Like, there's still shame in my body, but this was definitely like a big vehicle to clear out a lot of it. Where after this, I was like, I felt so free. I felt so liberated. I felt like I came back to autonomy of my body and my pleasure and all that I am. And there's deeper levels of that for me to continue getting into, and I did in the sex party, and I think I'm gonna go to, there's a sex club here in Palm Springs that I'm gonna go to by myself one day and just like continue leaning into like the like fucking pleasure, you know, going and getting it. But yeah, that's the story. The really beautiful thing about all of this, like on top of the personal growth that it provided me, what this led to was inspiring a lot of other people. So I've got quite a few followers on Twitter. I'm still deciding when I'm gonna share what my fucking handle is and everything, but I'm out there. There's hundreds of videos on my Just for Fans page and my Fansly page that I should probably just tell everybody about and like whatever, go subscribe, right? But throughout this process, I had so many guys reaching out to me on Twitter or in my DMs on my content platforms who were telling me how much I inspired them to explore their kink more. They loved how much I owned it. And like, let me tell you more, like I would fucking like be on my living room floor like massaging my prostate with a dildo and like pissing all over myself. And I was finding all of this like hidden pleasure in my body. Like if you haven't done this before, please try it. If you have something in your ass, hard cock, rub your cock head to like start a stream of piss. And it feels so fucking good to start a stream of piss with something pressing against your prostate in a hard cock. It's like you're orgasming for the entire length of how long you piss. There's so much different sensation to explore with like the prostate and the like urinary tract and all of that. And so all of the content that I made, it was all solo content. It was all just me like wetting myself in the woods or pissing on myself in the bathroom or pissing on myself in the bath or like wearing singlets and like jerking off and pissing while jerking off and like relishing and rolling and soaking in the mess of it, and just it was so good, right? But in a bit inhibitions, without those, in the state of not having inhibitions while enjoying my pleasure and posting it online, I had all these guys coming to me saying, like, you've inspired me to explore this more. Like, you enjoying it and you like being so open about it and putting it out there like it's like nobody's fucking business has inspired me to do it too. And thank you so much. I finally have the courage to like ask my boyfriend of 3 years if he'll engage with this kink with me. I've never told him about this, but you made it okay. So now, like, I helped other people free up their own shame just by watching me. Isn't that fucking cool? That's fucking epic. That's like some fucking energy work at play. That's like the raw potency of my sexual energy freeing this shame, rippling out into the people that are watching my content. I got so many of those comments. And it was so fulfilling. It was so fulfilling and it was so rewarding. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. A couple things, if you have questions about any of this, put them in the comments. I love feedback and I wanna know what kind of questions you guys have around all of this. How did it land with you? Do you have similar experiences? Like anything that this brought up for you, I would love to hear about it. And be sure to like my video, share it with somebody if you feel called to, but be sure to subscribe. I'm also on Instagram at sacralsteve, the same as my YouTube handle. All of my links are going to be in the description, and if you want to stay in the loop with everything I've got going on, there's going to be a link in the description for getting on my email list, and that's really the best way to like get all the shit that I put out there. And I don't have the capacity to spam people, so you're not gonna get like a flood of emails from me, but it will be a really good way for you to stay in touch with everything I've got, because I've got some really fucking juicy shit coming in 2025. Speaking of stuff to come, so at the beginning of this video, I mentioned, you know, click here for the Reiki video. I haven't made that yet. That's one of the next videos I'm going to make. It's gonna be all about Reiki, and it's gonna be about how learning Reiki for me was a tool that I was able to add to my self-help toolkit that really started making a difference for me. Everything that I am today, like the past 4-5 years of rapid, intense growth that I've gone through, all stemmed from the foundations I laid with learning energy work and some of the principles and perspectives that I view and engage the world with now, all from energy work. So I am really excited for that video, and I've been teaching Reiki for 2 or 3 years now, but come January 2025, I'm gonna be teaching it in an all new way. I'm gonna do a 6 or so week live online teaching of it. And I'm not only gonna teach Reiki, but I'm gonna lay the foundation for some of these very foundational principles of practical energy work. So it's like how to take the woo-woo spiritual Reiki energy work stuff and boil it down into digestible and practical tools that you can start implementing in your life to start really carving out the internal landscape required to keep getting further and further into the life that you want to live. So the wait list for that program is up and running. I'm so fucking excited. I'm calling it Reiki Level 1, Principles of Practical Energy Work. There's only gonna be 8 spots. So there's a priority waitlist email list that's different than my typical email list. So if you wanna be like first dibs and registration and first dibs on more information to come on that, be sure to get on the priority waitlist email list for the Reiki Level 1 Principles of Practical Energy Work program. But regardless, get on all my email lists anyway. So thank you so much. Description for all of that good stuff. I love you all, and goodbye.